money if you want it to be. Presents could be money. I mean, books could be money if you wanted them, if there were only a certain number. As a matter of fact, you think about that. Sometimes if you can only find like one edition of a book, all of a sudden it becomes worth a lot of money. So people actually trade books one for the other. They can find an equal value. So in effect, that's barter. Money basically lets us be self-sufficient. If I've got 100 bananas and I want a cow, I don't have to go off and find somebody who's got a cow who wants to, sell it for 100 bananas. I don't even have to find somebody who's got 30 chickens that'll trade me 100 bananas for 30 chickens, and then I can trade the 30 chickens for the cow. Basically, it frees us from all of that stuff. Back in ancient Rome, money was cattle. In Mesopotamia, barley was used as money. In Africa on the west coast, it was cowrie shells. In this country, before we arrived, it was wampum. And then after we did arrive, back in the colonies of Virginia and Maryland, tobacco was used as money. Almost anything can be money, except it has to be relatively scarce. You can't be able to counterfeit it. That's important there. It's got to be portable. That's why the Yap Islanders, with their huge stones, remember those money? Never made it in international finance. It's got to be divisible. It's got to be readily accepted by a large number of people. It's got to have a relatively high value-to-weight ratio. That sort of left Robert Bork out of the picture. And basically, it's got to be... And look, prisoner of war camps during wars, oftentimes cigarettes became money, or were used as money. I met a guy who used to... Actually, I met a guy on a cruise where I was sailing once, and he used to trade cigarettes that he'd have for a journal so that he could write and draw pictures. Later, one of his pictures that he drew while in the prisoner of war camp was published by Life magazine. Paper unto paper, dust unto dust. You know, I find a biblical reference somewhere. I met another man who used to write stories. He wrote stories on tissue paper. Just yesterday in the newspaper, Mr. Mbika was released from prison in South Africa. His novel was smuggled out of prison. He'd written it on tissue paper. The man I met used to write stories on cigarette papers. They were short stories. He used to write about love. He used to write about how love can tear us apart. Stopped breathing. She'd sit up and listen. At night, they'd been married for 50 years. And what she dreaded more than anything was the stopping of the sounds. During the daytime, she'd listen also. In the daytime, she'd listen to the sound of him turning pages of the newspaper in the next room, or the striking of the match. He lit his tobacco in his pipe. And she'd call him. She'd say, "Emile? Emile, come here. It's time for your drops." When the prescription was filled, and he'd come, and she'd feed him the drops, and then wipe this little dribble as it would run down his chin. And he'd go back. One day she was in the kitchen, stirring at the stove. In the next room, she heard a sound of something falling. She kept breathing. Laid down the ladle on the kitchen table, not minding that it went on the cloth. Walked to the door. Opened the door. There was Emile standing in the corner, At his feet, a large scrapbook filled with photographs, postcards from their 50 years of marriage. He bent down to pick them up. She said, "No, Emil, let me. Gathered them together. "Emil," she said, "what is it? What is it?" But he just turned and shuffled off. She clutched at his sleeve. "Emil." Finally, he stopped. "I was just thinking," he said. Sometimes love can tear us apart. But what love should do